Just now you woke up. You glance down and see only a vague outline of a mostly translucent, indistinguishable body, and you have no idea who you are, or where you've come from. There is a huge, seemingly endless white area all around you. A big screen is in front of you. An emblem on it says, "Build your world. Start right here." When you press it, a window opens with what look to be features, descriptions, and guidelines for how a world functions. How you perceive the functioning of the society you will be born into. There is a description and an on-off toggle for each item on the list. You choose the conditions of the society you will dwell in after reading the list for an indefinite period of time. The rules and laws, the treatment of individuals and groups, what rights individuals and organizations will have, how individuals and groups will receive assistance, what is permitted and prohibited, the distribution and redistribution of labor, goods, and wealth, and so forth. You quickly recognize an issue. You have no idea who you will become. You have no idea if you will be Asian, Hispanic, black, white, or any other race. You also have no idea whether you will be male or female, crippled or able-bodied. You have no idea what you'll like. You have no idea what your sexual orientation will be. You have no idea if you will be born into a wealthy or poor household. You soon come to the conclusion that the best thing you can do is to make sure that the world you construct treats everyone as fairly as well as possible, so that everyone has an equal chance at a happy and wealthy life, regardless of who they were born as or who is among the poorest. You complete. You look over your work and are pleased with what you produced. You then click Done at the bottom of the last screen. The veil of ignorance, often called the original position, is a type of thought experiment that was first proposed by American philosopher John Rawls in his book, A Theory of Justice. Using this thought experiment, Rawls demonstrated a neutral viewpoint that a society's founders, members, and leaders should all aim to embrace in order to assess and decide on just laws and values. This thought experiment may offer a very helpful ideal for how we should think about and work toward a just and fair society, but it has a flaw in that it seems impossible for anyone to ever actually achieve such a position. When Rawls wrote, "Original position is a totally hypothetical circumstance," he was aware of this, except insofar as it attempts to explain moral judgments and explains why we feel a sense of fairness. The original notion is not meant to explain human behavior. He goes on to say that it is unlikely that anyone can ever achieve a state of neutrality and balance. This brings us to our first philosophical conundrum, the problem of fairness. In a society where everyone can only decide laws and principles based on partial, biased, self-interested, and unoriginal viewpoints, how do we define and implement fairness? Is it ever truly possible to be fair? The veil of ignorance raises issues with justice and fairness, but it also raises issues with luck. Naturally, we have no control over who we will be born as or what culture we will be born into. Therefore, it is completely up to chance whether we are born into a certain civilization as someone who is favored by that society or not. Furthermore, no matter who we are or where we are born, all of the uncontrollable things that happen to us during our lifetime are likewise the result of luck. We now arrive at our second philosophical conundrum, the problem of moral luck. The English philosopher Bernard Williams coined the phrase moral luck in 1976, and American philosopher Thomas Nagel was the main contributor to its subsequent development. In general, moral luck describes circumstances where a moral agent receives a certain amount of moral credit or blame for an action, but the person had no control over the action, its results, or their own unique circumstances that affected the amount of credit or blame they received. To be clear, a moral agent is someone who can think about right and wrong and choose to behave in accordance with those thoughts. Thomas Nagel distinguishes 4 types of moral luck in his article, Moral Luck: resultant or consequential, constitutive, causative, and circumstantial. In situations when moral responsibility is placed on an individual, or not, mostly on the consequences of their conduct rather than just the deed itself, and the consequences were produced, or not, largely by chance, this is known as resulting moral luck. Take, for instance, two distinct bars located across the street from one another. In the first bar, there is a man named Tom. Both Tom and Larry are fairly fine individuals, and there is a man named Larry in the second. However, each end up arguing with someone else in their separate bars tonight. The disagreement turns physical in both situations, a typical bar fight that occurs countless times every day all over the world. At one point during the fight, Tom punches the other person, striking them in the face. After the other individual gives Tom a few punches in return, the bar's employees break up the altercation. With a few minor injuries and a body full of adrenaline, Tom leaves the bar with the other person after they are both ejected. Simultaneously, during his confrontation in Larry's pub, he likewise uses the same bar fight level skill set as Tom and delivers a punch with the same force and speed, striking the other person in the face. However, this individual stumbles backward and strikes their skull on the floor. Due to the head trauma they sustained, the person is declared deceased later that evening. Larry is taken into custody, found guilty of manslaughter, and given a prison term of several years. Even when Larry and Tom did the exact same thing, Larry receives a lot of moral responsibility, while Tom receives almost none because of the unintentional repercussions. Since they all refer to the good fortune or misfortune of a person's conditions or circumstances that either cause them to commit an act that is considered moral or immoral, or that cause them to receive a different level of moral blame or praise than someone else who committed the same act, circumstantial, constitutive, and causal moral luck are all comparatively similar to one another. Consider the identical bar scenario, but let's move down the street to a third bar where a man called Marcus is also involved in a dispute that has escalated into a physical brawl. This is an example of circumstantial moral luck. However, just as Marcus is about to wind up to punch the other person in the face, the bar's fire alarms go off, totally diverting both of them and putting an end to the fight's intensity as they are led outside the establishment alongside the other customers and staff. Because of the serendipity of his situation, Marcus refrained from punching the other person in the face as forcefully as he would have. Therefore, despite having the same purpose to carry out the exact same conduct as Larry, he is not held morally responsible in the slightest. Let's go a few blocks over to another bar now. Stephanie, a woman who is also involved in a bar fight this evening, is in this establishment. It's a busy evening. At one point during the dispute, Stephanie also punches the other person, striking them in the face, which causes them to fall backwards and strike their head on the ground. This individual also passes away later that evening due to a head injury. However, Stephanie is spared jail time because during the trial it was revealed that she had recently been diagnosed with severe borderline personality disorder and had been subjected to horrific and persistent abuse as a child, which directly caused her to become excessively violent and lack self-control. Therefore, she is only temporarily under the care of a mental health hospital. Stephanie is experiencing constitutive moral luck in this instance because despite the fact that her actions and outcomes are exactly the same as Larry's, the circumstances in her life that led to her current state of being have an impact on or lessened the moral blame she was given. Stephanie may be given at least less moral responsibility in this scenario, which seems sensible enough, but let's return to Larry. Larry did not have a particularly unusual life, was not mistreated as a child, and has no known mental health conditions. He is generally a little self-centered and violent, and he was just a little sleepy tonight. Initially, Larry would appear to be the more ethically culpable party. But did Larry make the decision to be drained and tense that evening? Who would pick this? Did Larry decide to be generally physically aggressive and a little self-centered? Larry is not what caused Larry in the first place. Only a number of external factors, who he was raised by, what he was exposed to, what happened to him, etc., as well as his genetically determined behavioral tendencies, which he also never chose or controlled, contributed to his current state of being. If this is the case, how is Larry any more morally accountable than someone like Stephanie for getting into a fight at the pub that evening? Larry's situation involves the last type of moral luck, often known as misfortune or causal moral luck, in accordance with Nagel's theory. In light of this, since moral behavior demands the capacity to judge right from wrong and make decisions accordingly, can anyone be held morally accountable for their deeds if they are always the result of other people's deeds and events that they were never in charge of or able to influence? Naturally, this does not negate the need for consequences. Although there can and should be, the previous statement is still valid. Think of a vicious dog. Since we typically don't think of dogs as moral beings, we wouldn't consider a vicious dog to be immoral. Even if we decide it's better to put the dog down, it doesn't mean we have to give the dog moral responsibility. Similarly, think of a tornado. Undoubtedly, tornadoes are extremely deadly, and if we could stop or even eliminate them, we would. However, once more, we wouldn't have to place moral guilt on a tornado at any point along the process. Why do we do it to ourselves then? Are we so arrogant as to believe that we are the only entity above nature, the only thing distinct from it, and the only one capable of escaping what nature has brought forth for us? Although we are conscious, how did we become so? According to Albert Einstein, a human being is a component of the entire thing that we refer to as the universe. A portion that is time and space limited. He has an optical hallucination of awareness in which he perceives himself, his thoughts, and his feelings as something distinct from the others. This leads to the third and last philosophical issue, the problem of moral knowledge. Morality, what is it? What are we going to base it on? Is there anything in morality that is objectively true? The Scottish philosopher David Hume initially proposed the is-ought conundrum in the 18th century, which is where this topic got its start. The is-ought problem occurs when someone attempts to make moral assertions about how the world should be and how one should act in it based on reality. Hume proposed that in order to arrive at any kind of ethical declaration, facts and ethical presumptions must be united. However, we only employ subjective interpretations to arrive at these ethical presumptions because we have no other foundation upon which to build and solidify our views. It could be argued that we can only ascertain moral principles via the following techniques: religious or spiritual beliefs, feelings, and rationality and science. The issue is that each of these depends on subjectivity, assumption, or both. Naturally, when moral ideas are drawn from spiritual or religious sources, the issue is the sources from whence these values originated. The religion itself must be objectively true in order for its ideas to be believed. What evidence do we have to support this conclusion? Naturally, the issue with relying solely on feelings to determine morality is that feelings are closely related to personal, subjective perception and are impacted by a variety of factors, including our upbringing, temperament, cultural history, and so forth. Finally, science and reason appear to be the most effective means of establishing moral norms. Because moral values are facts about the welfare of conscious beings, philosopher Sam Harris contends in his book, The Moral Landscape, that morality can be inferred from scientific knowledge about the state of the world. Therefore, we can ascertain objective moral truths about good and bad by knowing what behaviors or occurrences maximize the pleasure or well-being of aware animals, and what behaviors bring pain and suffering to sentient creatures. However, Sam and other proponents of this theory appear to smuggle in an initial ought here as well, arguing that maximizing well-being is an objective reality. However, what is the foundation for this assertion? The term objective refers to something that exists independently of our emotions and opinions and would hold true whether or not we are aware of it. In what way, then, may the development of subjective conscious experience serve as a yardstick for establishing objective reality? What objective or goal outside of ourselves might we ascribe this metric to? In the end, it seems impossible to escape the cycle of is and ought without first introducing an ought assumption, a statement about how reality ought to be rather than as it is. Ultimately, the best way to solve the issues of justice, luck, and morality may be to move forward with an effort to comprehend, forgive, and have compassion for the ridiculousness of it all, rather than focusing on achieving perfect justice or objective right and wrong. A kind of empathy for all people and things throughout history, the world, and into the future, for those who seem good to us, and for those who seem awful to us once more. This does not imply complete tolerance or complacency. Having empathy for the plight of others allows one to oppose, fight, or punish those they see to be wrong. Actually, none of us made the decision to be born into this world in the form and identity that we are. We didn't establish the rules. We are all here now, even though none of us actually had a voice in the matter. Compassion seems to be one of, if not the only, guiding principles that has saved humanity throughout history, supports constructive progress, and accepts and forgives the mistakes we have made and will surely continue to make. In the words of the German pessimist philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, boundless compassion for all living beings is the surest and most certain guarantee of pure moral conduct and needs no casuistry. Whoever is filled with it will assuredly injure no one, do harm to no one, encroach on no man's rights. He will rather have regard for everyone, forgive everyone, help everyone as far as he can, and all his actions will bear the stamp of justice and loving kindness. It seems sense that the constant barrage of stimulation in today's environment has caused many of us to lose part, if not all, of our attention spans. Because of this, it might be challenging to remain motivated, involved, and focused on educational media that has real nutritional value. I hope this content has helped to broaden your reflections on justice, morality, and compassion, themes that help us to better understand the world and, above all, ourselves. These concepts are fundamental to creating a fairer and more empathetic society, and reflecting on them can be the first step towards significant changes, both individually and collectively. If this video has added value to your day, please like it. It not only helps the channel grow, but also allows this content to reach more people who can benefit from these ideas. Also, share the video with someone you think needs to see this content. Sometimes a reflection can be all someone needs to transform the way they see life. And of course, I really want to hear from you. What struck you most about this content? What point sparked a reflection that will accompany you on a daily basis? Write in the comments, I'll read each one, and I'd love to know what you think.